Well, you have to understand at that time, Vietnam War was the central event of that generation. It was magnetizing. And I think a lot of young people, yes, didn't want to go, but they magnetized them not to. But at the same time, it brought in a lot of people like myself who were fascinated by the concept of actually going to a war like our fathers had done in World War II, and my grandfather in World War I also. So it was like, if I don't go there, I'm going to miss something that's central to our generation.
Any recollections that you might have, emotional or things that happen on the ground, that you would just like to use this opportunity to express that? And I'm not going to ask any question more specific than that right now. So if anybody would like to lead off with how the film might have stimulated or provoked certain thoughts or feelings that you think might be useful for us to hear about. Yes.
First experience I remember was when we got off the plane. First of all, the heat was intense, and the humidity was intense. And they put us on trucks and transport us over to our base camp, which we really didn't have a base camp at the time. But the thing that stands out the most in my mind was it was like out of the movies. All I could relate it to was like a World War II movie, which all of us were brought up on. And that was my first impression of Vietnam, was just nothing but military everywhere.
The first thing that hit you is like a blast furnace. It was so hot. And then they loaded you on these buses. And I can remember driving down the street, and we had these mesh wire over the windows, and I thought, what is that for?
That's going to stop something.
It was going to stop a hand grenade from being thrown through the window. That's what I didn't know what it was about. I'm going to 9th Replacement Battalion, where they assign you from there. And then they handed me a shotgun at 9th Replacement Battalion the first night and said, go guard that fence. And this was my first night, and I had all these pills in me. We had to take these malaria pills, remember?
You get a little sick.
And, my stomach was just nuts. And I'm a surfer from Manhattan Beach. What am I doing here?
As you're getting off the plane, you're all the new guys getting off this United Airlines that flew us over there. You're looking, and the other people are getting on the other plane, and you're passing them, and they're looking at you, and you're looking at them, and you see this hollowness in their eyes. They're very, very quiet. They're thinking about what happened in Vietnam. They're thinking about the people that they left behind. But you just see this hollowness in their eyes as you pass them. And you know that, hey, this is reality.
The first few weeks in the field were really rough for most of us because we didn't know what we were doing, really. And at the same time, we were new guys. They call us FNGs, fucking new guys. But there was a contempt. There was a lack of camaraderie. I can only say in the infantry units that I was in, because we were not going over as a group at the same time. We were going over to replace troops that had been wounded or killed. So it was they broke us up. So we were joining new units. That's not it's not a very wise move.
Tex, you got Junior and Taylor here on your position.
God damn it, Elias, don't mess with my pig. I ain't getting greased on this bush tonight, so you keep this sorry cheese dick off my ass.
You got Taylor. Gardner, you're with me.
Of course, I relate to the film and Gardner. If you remember Gardner, he got killed in his like a second day out in the bush. As I was getting off the chopper, here I am, I'm brand new uniform, brand new everything, aid bags all over the place. I was like the guy where they're pulling stuff out. You shouldn't have this. And the guy that I was replacing, the medic who was going home, was sitting on that pad, and of course, as I'm getting off the chopper, I thought the guy would at least tell me, where I'm going. He just pushed me aside, jumped on that chopper. Next thing I know, I'm walking down a hill trying to find out where I'm supposed to go. That night, we go on a night patrol. Never been in the bush, never done anything like that. And of course, I'm rattling, making pots and pans, making noise. Guys are yelling at me, shut the fuck up. So that was, how I got indoctrinated.
You learn, because you have to learn to survive. I mean, because even if you're a bad soldier, they're going to pick up on it, and they don't want you around them. So trust is very important between soldiers. If you got a guy next to you who's got an M60 machine gun, he better damn well know how to fire it, and you better damn well know how to load it, and there ought to be no jamming. So there's got to be this trust between soldiers.
And I remember my first experience, besides the heat and the humidity and everything else, was we were taking small arms fire when the C-130 landed at the airport. And I'll tell you what, I mean, I'm not a war hero, you know, I mean, I appreciate the efforts and the guys that were wounded over there and what they've done and everything else, but I'll tell you what, I was a young kid and I was scared to death. That's what I remember. You know, I remember being afraid, you know, more than anything else. And you know what, I don't think I ever really got used to it. I kind of got numb to the experience of the fear I felt, you know, after a while.
Actually, we had practiced and simulated combat all over South Carolina. We had some pretty interesting field exercises, for example, going out at night and getting into, you know, tracer fights over like several acres of terrain at night. It was good. It was a good experience. They made you scared at times, you know. But when you actually got there and did it, fuck. It just was so chaotic. You still can't believe it. The first incoming round, you can hear it. You know what incoming sounds like, but it takes a little time to get used to the sounds, and the older guys are telling you everything, or trying to.
I'm listening to these stories, and I'm trying to think to myself, what were the first experiences? What were the things that you saw in the combat zone that were really unique and experience-wise? And what really amazed me as a youngster in Vietnam, like most everyone else was the uncommon courage of some of these people that I saw. And when we responded in action, and I think anybody that had been in a combat situation will understand this, you're not scared. You don't have any fear while you're doing what you're trained and what you're assigned to do. After it's over with, and you sit down and you realize, wow, you know, look what we did. How did we do this? How did we get back? You know, how did we survive? That's when you start to shake and start to feel a little worried.
There was a split in Vietnam between two different. I'm being broad, but I'm saying in the movie Platoon covered that split between two different groups. Those who believed we should kill more of them, and those who believed that, you know, I'm basically going to try to survive and get out of here in one piece because this war is nuts.
Does that ring true to you guys, the kind of conflicts, the intra-platoon conflict that was happening there? Does that strike you as something? What about you?
There was a lot of things going on that were people refusing to fight, people, you know, checking out, people taking drugs, people, you know, ending up at, you know, LBJ, at, you know, just, you know, I had a guy in one of the units who, you know, shot his finger off in a mission in the mountain just so he could get the hell out of there.
Thank God I served in 65 and 66, where it was a true war, where it was true camaraderie.
Good leaders.
And good leaders. And we didn't have none of that stuff. There was no smoking dope in the tents when we had tents. There was no smoking dope out in the bush. We didn't have any of that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And in Frenchie's and I, Charlie Company, we had one fragging. And that was it. That's the only one that probably you and I both know about.
Yeah. Paul, you had a comment.
Yeah, mea culpa. I mean, I had, you know, I had the opportunity to be out in the field some and then back at Division Base Camp in Ankei. And I'll tell you what, I mean, I served in 1966 as well, and I was one of those guys who was smoking dope and was smoking opium and was using heroin and was one of those guys in the bunkers that you saw in the movie, you know? Not out in the field. Now, I grant you that, not out in the field, but back at Division Base Camp, an incredible amount of racism. You know, it was like, I remember getting an ass whipping from a bunch of Southern white guys because I made a decision to hang around with the black guys because they were from an urban environment, you know, and so was I. I was from Oakland, California, and I was used to black guys, you know, and you know, they had what it was that I wanted. They were, you know, had the ability to party, and they had the drugs and stuff like that. And when I had the opportunity to participate in it, I did. You know, and I do work now as a drug counselor, you know, and I'll tell you what, out of the people that I work with now that are clients of mine, males over the age of 50, I'll bet you 75% of them are Vietnam veterans, in-country Vietnam veterans, you know, so I don't know. And I also saw, I mean, a number of fraggings, That took place, and this is just the Cav. Maybe not in your unit, but in my unit, yeah, it was different. It really was. And we still took care of business. The camaraderie between individuals, it was still there. And when you were in the field, it was a different deal. You know what I mean? It really was.
And I tell you, whatever these people say, I performed my duties very well in the field. I didn't get stoned in the field. I was alert. I got better and better as a soldier. I did my time, and I got out alive, and I saved some people's lives. They can say what they want about drug impairment. It's not true. When you're back in the rear, yeah, you get a little bit stoned, and you know what? It keeps you fucking relaxed. It keeps you keeps you human. When you see some of those uptight white guys who are drinking, listening to their country music, playing poker, it wasn't releasing them. It was like their levels of tension. You could feel it, and their desire, their hatred of what they call the gooks, was profound. They had no interest in them. They saw them as animals.
It's a story that needs to be told. There was a young private. It's the lowest rank. It came up, and they got caught in the open. They had a bunker, and they had a machine gun, and he was caught. They swung across, and they got everybody behind him. They fired too late. He was in the middle. And they were going to come back and get him, and he knew it. But because he was a Marine, he jumped up, went with one magazine, popped the other, and went straight at it till he'd gone through both of them straight at that, and kept him down. And when he was out, they cut him in half, but the guys flanked it and got that position. He got no medals. Mm-hmm. And I've been waiting for the time to tell it, so it'll always be known.
We all know how you feel, and we all appreciate the fact that you shared that story with us right now. Anybody else want to come in here? Let me go there. I'll go back to you next.
The military really got a really bad rap. These stories of these uncountable numbers of heroism, you're never ever going to find them out, but they were there. They were commonplace. They were every day. And yet the military took the ride for the dope, for the racial hatreds, for the fraggings that were going on. And what they didn't seem to realize, especially the people in 68 and 69, when I was there, they didn't realize that the Army, the military, was a microcosm of what was going on in the United States. They were having the race riots. They were having the drug wars. They were having the assassinations going on. Military just happened to be in an unpopular war. And so it was real easy to criticize the fact that they smoked dope. It was real easy to criticize them the fact they had fragging and racial hatred, when it was just a symptom of what was going on in our country at that same time. To this day, they still have not admitted that. And the military still gets a bad rap because of that.
Well, I want to get to a couple more general themes. The first of those themes is the Vietnamese people. Your interaction with the Vietnamese people. We see in the film various types of interactions with Vietnamese people that probably don't represent the full range of experiences that you had, certainly. But I'd like to have you just reflect for a moment, and then anybody who would like to lead us off in this segment with a comment about your sense of, your impressions of the Vietnamese people themselves while you were there. Not the enemy necessarily, but Vietnam and the Vietnamese people. Anybody have a thought about that they'd like to offer?
Yeah, as a medic with the CB Battalion, we volunteered to go on medcap into the villages once a week. And the chaplain would go along and several corpsmen, and we would treat the people for whatever they had. A lot of times they would have cuts on their legs, and we would provide them with antibiotics and gauze and bandages. And after a while, we kind of control it because we didn't feel it always stayed on that individual, that it was passed on to the enemy. My last medcap was the day before the Tet Offensive, and I was in the city of Hue treating people in a little village, and that night, the attack started, and at that point I said to myself, I'm never going there because nobody told me anything, and they had to know that somebody was around them. There were no cautions. So I became suspicious and wouldn't do it anymore.
Right.
It was this one day, and this was a day that I will never forget. we were going from LZ to LZ and bringing in, and I had this young guy there, and I spent the last 40 minutes just holding him together and taking him to the hospital. Then we come into another LZ, which had it right outside of a Montagnard village. And there was this woman, and I had no idea her age. She was laying down, and I knew something was wrong. But, you know, we were looking, I was taking care of the guys, and that was my priority. I was doing that. And then I realized she was having a breach, and I took her out, and she was going to die. The baby was going to die. And I helped her give birth. She gave birth, and I had a guy who we took in who he didn't make it. And yet I had this one, and the look that I had from the soldier, and then I had the look from this family. I mean, silent gratitude, and it was silent gratitude from both. He knew he wasn't going to make it, and yet now I'm just, you know, 180, and the gratitude that these people had for us. And it wasn't directed at me, it was directed at us. Because they didn't want anything to do with anything. They just wanted to farm. And I always think of that family. God knows how many times I wake up, where is that kid today? And what's going on? You know, and that's it.
Wow.
Wow. I was in 3 different combat units and 1 rear unit. We met more in the 1st Cavalry, more civilians. And the treatment would vary from very positive to very negative. There were reports of murders, there was reports of rapes, and it was that type of situation. You have to understand, it was all, not that we were as sloppy as the soldiers in My Lai, but there was always a confusion as to who was who. We didn't know which villager was with them. There were weapons stored in some of these villages, so there. You know, and so therefore a lot of the soldiers were confused as to who the villagers were, and they would take them on as enemies. I saved a girl, two girls from being raped. You know, I think a lot of soldiers had the excuse of war to see the Vietnamese as animals. And that's why I wrote that Barnes, Elias scene where Barnes shoots the lady. I didn't see that scene, but it's a metaphor for the way we treated them.
In the film, Chris, the character Charlie Sheen, as he is going through the movie from the first scene to the end, it's all about a change that he goes through, or maybe more than one change, right? He comes in as sort of the naive kid, the innocent kid, the kid that signed up with a bunch of other draftees around him and guys that are a little more cynical about what's going on, been there longer.
How in the fuck you get here anyway? Hey, you look educated.
I volunteered for it.
You do what?
I volunteered. I dropped out of college and told them I wanted the infantry, combat, Vietnam.
What we got here is a crusader. Sounds like it. Shit.
He becomes a warrior. You see, and there's one scene where he does his Audie Murphy routine, right? And then toward the end, he becomes very reflective and questioning and even doubting and taking it very personally. Well, when I go home, I'm going to find the meaning in all this for me. I'm going to find the good that this brought out in me.
It is a transformation. You know, we all lost our innocence in Vietnam, so to speak. When we got there, I was raised, I was in a military academy when I was 5 years old. I was taught about duty and loyalty and the flag and the country and, you know, those kinds of things. Then I went to the Marine Corps. It was God, country, and Corps. So you have these things and you take those with you. But once you get there and once you get into that zone, and like I said, you have these people way on the left that have that type of mentality, and then you have the ones on the right where they're quite a distance away from you in the way they feel about things. But they're there because of the family problems or because they didn't have any money, and you converge after a while into that same spot where it's all about getting through this thing, coming back alive, and trying to figure out exactly where we've been and what we did.
When I went over there the first time, innocence was there. But by the end of my 2 tours in Nam, I was bitter. I was bitter that the leadership, and I'm sorry, that's a bad word, the management that came from 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue, we didn't have leadership. We had management.
And you feel that you went through that kind of realization yourself?
Yeah, a little bit like Charlie Sheen did in the movie. Very much so. Very much idealistic. Bitter as hell when I came out of it because of the bodies. Yeah. And the thing is, the bodies on both sides. Because the North Vietnamese were fighting for something they believed in. They were a warrior. We were warriors. You know, that it's an honorable enemy. But the leadership on our side, there wasn't any.
I grew up apple pie, the American flag, and Mom, and my duty was to my country. And that's how I felt, and I still feel that way to this day. I have no regrets. As far as innocence, it did make me a different person. I can't, you can't deny that. You experience something like that, you come back into society, but like I said earlier today, it's the single most important event that I've experienced in my life, and I take that with me with that pride, and to just sit in this room with these guys right now and listen to their stories. Yeah.
It's been good for all of us. It's been good for all of us. Anybody else want to pick that up? We got a couple over here.
My transformation, I mean, I was a country kid, grew up on a farm. When I came home from Vietnam, I was bitter. I went to school, went back to college on the GI Bill, changed my entire life. My entire life changed in Vietnam. I'm sure it did for every person who served in Vietnam. But you can take a look at our country right now, the drug problem, the homeless problem, the problem you're having with all kinds of marriage dissolution. You go back to Vietnam. I mean, there's 15 million guys. You go out on the street, half those guys on the street, Vietnam vets. I mean, our whole country was transformed during that 12, 13-year period from this secure, objective, straightforward country to the lack of goals. We weren't able to get, in other words, we're elucidating now 32, 35, 37 years after the fact, things that we should have brought out a lot sooner because we had to subjugate it in order to survive. In other words, we couldn't bring these things out. It was too painful. But now we can. And that's why, veterans have to stay together, stick together, work with other veterans, American Legion, VVA, VFW, Purple Heart Society. All of us are brothers. Got to stay together.
Thank you. So this war continues to live on, doesn't it, in a variety of ways for us. I mean, I guess it lives on for the country in certain ways, but for each of you individually, it continues to go on. You had a comment for us on this topic. Let's stay on the topic for a while.
Getting back to what this gentleman said about their reunions after how many years, 20 years or so, and there's one coming up. I really, I appreciate these guys, what they do now, and wish I could have had that continuation. Not the war, not the Vietnam, not the good, the bad, just the guys, and I don't have that. And that's good, man. Yeah. That's good.
Yeah.
That's a good deal.
Absolutely.
That's great. Let's go here.
If you can reach someone out there, like Terry said, he and I and a few others deal with the homeless, and this gentleman up here, he deals with the homeless and the guys with the drugs. Those are the guys that we have got to bring home. Each one of you, if you can reach one other veteran, reach out and help him. Yeah. And that's what we really need to do.
There were 5 million, or I don't know how many were all there. There were 5 million different Vietnam Wars because everybody's experience was unique and different. And even if you were side by side because of your background, it was different. And I've known Terry for many, many years, consider him a great friend, and this is the first time I've ever heard him talk about it. But I know we were in the same place, there, so this was good for that.
I've always talked about it since Platoon came out because I feel that it unblocks. I don't want to get hung up on Vietnam. It happened, and there are many things still that I don't understand about it and I have to answer for probably. But it's better to talk. And I think that's the way to heal.